Okay, you are going to create a still life of vegetables or fruits or whatever it is that you happen to put in front of you. That is our main goal here. Now, this is all inspired by an artist named Johannes Vermeer. Vermeer, in the early 1400s, painted still life, but he did them in oils. So they were very realistic, where a lot of food, okay, and other items were in a pile. And they were painted with oils with a distinct light source shining on them. You are going to paint fruits and vegetables that you have around, or of course, I might set some in front of you in class. So what you're going to do is find yourself a pile of veggies and set them down on a white surface if possible, like lay out a piece of paper. Bananas, grapes, watermelon, apples, fake fruit if you happen to have it. Laying around. Out of the refrigerator here, I have a pear, an onion, some garlic, some green peppers. You could have carrots, who knows. But look for a variety of objects. Now, let's talk about still life here. When you set up a still life, you want to group your objects together. You want a distinct light source, like here it's coming from the left. You want to play on it as far as your sizes. Like here I have a tall object next to a medium object and a lower object. You can sometimes stack them up, okay? You can turn the direction of them. So specifically, look for an interesting composition. Sometimes it's really good to have, darks and lights next to each other, a light object next to a dark object, and so on. Where here, I've got a red object next to a green, next to a purple. It probably wouldn't be good to have similar colors together. Here is an onion on top of another onion, and I struggle seeing the difference between these two. If you do that, you have to be very careful to be able to distinguish your objects. So keep that in mind. Okay, before we start painting these, your assignment is going to be this. You're going to sketch your still life very quickly. Now, we are only doing this in a couple of days, so you're going to create some quick, fast thumbnail sketches. They are not graded. It is just to find a composition, like a grouping or an arrangement of them. So to decide on what you're going to paint. Draw your composition onto watercolor paper as lightly as possible, okay? In the classroom, I have this little, it's called a dry cleaner pad that you can erase pencil and or lighten pencil so that it doesn't erase it completely, but makes it just so that you can see it. Remember, when you paint, you're going to use the concept of tea, milk, and then honey, okay? So you're going to paint thin with light values first, then slowly thicken and darken the paint with each layer. You're going to paint your onions, if you have onions, in monochromatic colors, potatoes in complements, because you know what? A potato is like an orangey color, and across the color wheel is a blue, that's its complement. So mixing orange and blue together, you're going to get the brown of a potato. You're going to paint peppers, using analogous colors. So no matter what color pepper you have, here are green peppers. Those peppers in particular, green next to it on the color wheel is blues and yellows. Those are analogous colors. Here's a red pepper. And this red pepper is painted, yes, it's red, but there are purples next to it on the color wheel. So that's kind of a given. If you paint peppers, you will have analogous colors there. These are just suggestions. Paint the pear, if you have a pear, as you see fit, mixing and blending, and keep in mind that some of these vegetables have little speckles on them. So if you want to go in, bad example, and flick little spots, like you could paint spots on there, or you could splatter paint little spots on there. But if you do that, you might want to mask off the rest with scraps of paper. Like lay some clean paper on your other veggies and then splatter it and flick colors. So that's something else you could do. Or, you could carefully go in there and pull in detail work. Okay? If you have a garlic, that tends to be done in neutrals. I would say that a yellow onion would be the same. It's yellows, but they tend to be neutral yellows. Don't forget to ground your vegetables by adding a cast shadow or a background of a wall or a table. So cast shadows underneath your objects and some sort of a grayed background. Okay? Examples. So, before you continue, let's talk about color. How do you make tints and shades with watercolors? Okay, to get a light tone, you take the color and you just add more water. So a light red would be red plus water. You know, with acrylics and oils, we take white and we put a drop of red paint in it and mix it up. Not in this case, okay? You're just gonna add water to make it lighter. Green, you can make a lighter green, add yellow if you want, but again, more water. Blue, more water. Yellow, more water. I think it's a given, okay? To make your medium tone, it's pretty much just the color, and sometimes you could add a color next to it, like a red and violet in the red, or, you know, put a little of the complement in it to make it a little bit darker, okay? But to make it extremely dark on your reds, if you're using a red and you want a dark red, you're going to take red and purple and add its complement. So if you look at a color wheel, the color across from it. Green is across from red. Now, I'm not saying paint green on top of red. Take red paint and green paint and mix them together on your palette with some water, and you will get a brownish red, okay? Now, you want this to be on the red side, not the green side, meaning more red than green. Here, you're going to take green, if you want to make it darker, and you're going to add its complement, a little bit of red, little bit. If you want blue darker, you add a little bit of your orange. If you want yellow darker, ooh, this is scary, add a little bit of your violet or purple. It will neutralize it and turn it a golden color. Same with orange. You want to neutralize that, you add its complement blue. Now, I sometimes put another color in here with the plus. You know, that's to change, again, the hue. So this would be a reddish orange with blue in it. And violet, its complement is yellow. Okay, so let's find an example. Here's one that I painted a long time ago. Poor photo, I need to crop it. So what I do first, I did a preliminary sketch. Okay, I looked at my veggies, I drew it out. So I have a circle here, an ellipse, I guess I would say, another ellipse behind it, the shape of a pepper, the shape of a garlic, and a pear. Then, let's start with this onion here in the front because it's easier to see. Remember I talked about tea, milk, and honey. So the tea would be taking a very light red violet. I would take some alizarin crimson, a little bit of, that's a red, a little bit of a purple, mix them together and make a red violet. And then I put a light wash over it, leaving white, okay? With watercolor, you can't, remember you have to leave white of your paper. There's no white watercolor. You leave the whites. Okay, so I have to remember to paint around those highlights looking at my still life. So I'm gonna paint my tea layer very light, almost like a pink, and let it dry. While it's drying, I move to another piece of fruit. So this pear, I would mix in, I would make a light yellowy green color, and I would put a very light tea layer around my white space, and I'd paint that whole area. Then maybe I'd move over to this pepper, and I would paint this light red color, leaving the white spaces. Maybe this onion, then the garlic. There's a lot of white in that garlic, so I would put a little bit of tea layer of maybe a tan or a violet, okay? By then, this onion's dry. So now I'm gonna add my milk layer, meaning I'm gonna take my watercolor and make it a little bit thicker, kind of like adding milk to tea. So I paint a light coat of mediums. Now I would switch paintbrushes and I would put some detail work in, okay? So that's my milk layer. Move on to my pear. My milk layer would be this greenish color, a little bit of a shadow. Over here, my milk layer would be the darker reds, okay? Again, darker purples. And in here, oh, I don't know, not much is being added, maybe a little brown. Then last but not least, when it's dry, because you got to remember, you got to dry your layers in between. So if I paint this onion and this onion next to each other at the same time, they're going to run together. So now I'm putting my honey layer. Honey is super thick. So I have a thicker paint, okay, watercolor with just a little bit of water in it. Now you don't want it goopy, like sticky, but that's when I would take a tiny brush and paint these little squiggles and little tiny details everywhere. Over here, I would add my stem, I would add my speckles, some little darks. Over in the pepper here, this extreme dark over here, okay, here, some detail work in the stem, and down here, little flecks of the browns, okay? When I'm all done with my tea, milk, and honey, make sure it's all dry and paint yourself some cast shadows, okay? Looking at your shadows, are they just gray? You can put colors in them, make them interesting. I like to reflect the color of the actual fruit or veggie. I think that makes it interesting. And do something with your background, okay? Maybe draw a table in. Now, if you look through these slides, you're going to see a variety of still lifes that students have done. So here, the shadows are grays. They drew a corner. Here's another one. This one is painted very loosely, meaning it's almost sloppy, but I like the style. You've still got your tea, milk, and honey. You still have layers. You still have light. You have a consistent light source, okay? This one is extremely detailed, like an illustration to a book. You need to find your style and use whatever style works for you, okay? So, do the best you can with this video. Make sense of it. I'll see you soon.